Hey, I'm Nick Cook, and you're listening to the Warm Blanket Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Warm Blanket, the podcast where we embark on a journey to see what makes us feel good about Star Trek, where our love comes from, and what it means for us. In short, what is our warm blanket? My name is Gary, I'm your host today, and I'm very honored to welcome here my good friend Nick. He's best known for playing Captain Hunter on the online Star Trek fan series called Starship Intrepid. Their new episode, A Treasure for Ages, will be out later this year, that we're going to talk about too. He's a passionate Trekkie with a big heart, and I'm very lucky to welcome him here today. Let's give a warm welcome to Nick. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. And how are you tonight, Gary?
Couldn't be any better. Good in a good company.
I don't know about the warm heart. I think my daughter might argue I have a little black burned coal in there, but my wife probably more so. But that's a whole other discussion.
No, come on. I know you're exaggerating. You're an awesome person. And I'm really glad that you finally made it, because we've been talking about this for a while to actually sit down. But somehow time and management, mainly from my side.
I'm no better. My time management is terrible time management, and that's my wife shouting at my daughter. So in the background. But no, you're not alone in that problem at all.
All right. So before we jump into the deep stuff, there's something that I really wanted to ask for a long time now, and I don't think I ever asked you this question before. What the hell is...
I'm already married, okay? Sorry, but
Damn it, Jim. What the hell is Polaris?
Oh, that's a long and complicated story.
But give me the Reader's Digest version.
Back in the early 2000s, when, early to mid 2000s, when I was working on the first episode of Intrepid, there were a few fan films kind of burbling around at the time, and a chap called Dennis Bailey, who was a writer on a couple of episodes of Next Generation, Tin Man and First Contact, the episode, not the movie. Mm-hmm. I had some interaction with him and chat to him because he was interested in a fan film he was a big fan of a fan film called Starship Exeter. So we interacted quite a bit, and he did some effects work for me, and he was familiar with what I was doing and some other people working in fan films were doing. And at the time, he'd been thinking about doing his own fan film, which kind of evolved into actually let's do an original science fiction kind of space opera type thing. So that's where Starship Polaris came from. So back in December 2009, a bunch of us descended on what state was it? I think it was Maryland. So it was Maryland we were in. We were near Washington, D.C. anyway. Mm-hmm. And we filmed this little independent sci-fi film called Polaris. So it was the interiors we were shooting. So he had a partial bridge set built up, which actually looked amazing and was a lot of fun to work on. And we shot all the interiors, and it was a lot of fun, and it went really well. I mean, it had its problems, but it was just a great experience. And the plan was to shoot the exteriors the following year, which did happen. They shot all the exteriors. I wasn't there for that because I was only in the shipboard scenes. And that was that. So it went into post-production, and it's been stuck in post-production for about the last 10 years. Uh-huh. So funnily enough, I was speaking to Alex, who is currently supposed to be editing it, but he's moved countries. Just that he got married and moved to Brazil earlier this year, so obviously his broadband is a lot slower, and his Mac's still in storage, and he's got a lot of kind of logistical problems that have caused him issues this year. So it is chipping along. I'm told it will be finished one of these days, and I think there's a trailer online for it. I think it looks like a lot of fun. It's very much in the vein of Forbidden Planet, that kind of tone of 1950s sci-fi, but the visuals are obviously very updated. So I think all of us that are involved in it were very excited to see it done and see it released, and I'm hopeful it will be eventually. But it has been, as the saying goes, a long road from there to here. But yeah, I mean, the trailer's online. If you search for Starship Polaris, I think it looks great. Others may disagree, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, so if you think kind of maybe if someone had done a spin-off of Forbidden Planet in the 70s, maybe that kind of vibe. Um, but I like Dennis's writing, and I really like the script, and I like the arc. I mean, I was playing the first officer on this ship, which for me was fun. I was playing against Paul
Role of a
Sieber.
lifetime.
Absolutely, I was playing against Paul Sieber from Starship Farragut. He was the captain, and there was, yeah, it was just a lot of fun to act on. I got to shout a lot and jump around, and we were on battle, and it was just an awful lot of fun.
Was that your first acting job in a fan film cult?
It was probably, I would argue, it was my first non-Star Trek acting gig. Was it? Maybe it was my second, as I did do a couple of student things after that, around about that time as well. But yeah, I'd done a few fan films at that point, including kind of like I'd done Star Trek Phase 2 Blood and Fire at that point.
I was about to ask about that too.
And I'd done a few Hidden Frontiers at that point as well.
Oh yeah,
a few crossovers with Hidden Frontier.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly, Rob Caves is thinking about a reunion.
Really?
Yeah.
That would be awesome to see.
He messaged me a couple of months ago, actually, saying, yeah, I'm thinking about it. It's like, well, Rob, we're coming over in the summer. We'd be totally up for that. It's awesome. So it's great. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit. But that is not a bad thing. So this may still happen, but giving us a bit more time to, maybe plan it is not a bad thing, because Rob sold off most of his stuff because he needed to at the time. So he doesn't have costumes. He doesn't have props. Oh, he'd need new camera gear. I mean, he's still got camera gear, but it's very out of date camera gear now. So I'm hopeful that'll happen, actually. Maybe next year. We'll see. But that would be fun. I would, as I said to Rob, totally anything he wants to do Hidden Frontier wise, if he wants me, then I'm in. Because you know what? They were the scrappy guys with nothing that did the best they could with very little resources, and I think they were very creative, and I've always had a lot of respect for the work they produced. It wasn't always great work. I mean, even Rob would say, it wasn't always polished, things like that, but they just did remarkable things with so little technology. And I think Hidden Frontier and Starship Exeter, I'm a big fan of what the Johnson brothers did with Exeter. Those guys really kind of paved the way. I think they did a lot for paving the way for things like New Voyages and later Star Trek Continues. And I suspect someone like James probably would have moved into fan films, but I think seeing what other people had done stuff before him definitely gave him I mean, he may disagree with me, but I would say that gave him a push. And I know James was admired what the Johnson brothers did, and he certainly had said he was a fan of Rob's work on Hidden Frontier, so I'm assuming those were definitely motivators in his own production. But I love all these things. I mean, fan films, I mean, they go from the sublimely ridiculous to the incredibly polished and everything in between. I would argue that mine is somewhere in between, although some people would probably argue that they're ridiculously terrible. But these things are all a matter of perspective, and even with professional Star Trek productions, there are people who hate everything and people that love everything and people everywhere in between. So you can't please or displease everyone. We're all different and we all like and hate different things. I don't know what my point is there, but yeah. I'm rambling, which is what I do.
But that's fun. That's how we should go.
Good. That's good, because I ramble.
I like it. I ramble a lot too when I get the chance to talk, but this is not about me. This is about you.
Well,
a little bit of both.
You may regret that, but
No, I think it's gonna be fine. It's fun. So yes, you've been involved with fan productions. You're currently working on one. How did you get into fan productions?
I've told this story quite a lot in various venues, but I'll keep it as short as possible. I used to run the local Star Trek fan club in Dundee, and early 2000s, membership was starting to drop off, and this was around about the time when I started the club. there was no internet, or certainly no internet that was generally available to people. And you had dial-up. So now, if people want to watch something, legally or not, you go on the internet and you download it one way or another. When I was running a club, you couldn't do that. That wasn't an option, and you could wait months and years for new episodes of Star Trek in the UK. I mean, now something comes out. It comes out almost around about the same time here. We don't have years waiting. Back when I was a lad, we waited years for new episodes. So the big appeal of the club for most people was the fact that I had friends in the States. They would send me episodes. I don't know why I'm waving, because I know this is just audio, but I'm waving my hands because I do that.
That's
so
fine.
they would record episodes for me, and they would post them over to the States. So we'd get them at this time. It could take up to 6 weeks for a package to arrive. Now you can get a package within 48 hours, 24 hours sometimes. But back then, postage took up to like 6 weeks. We are living in a golden age. Anyway, around about the early 2000s, around about the time that Enterprise was starting to wind down. Well, Enterprise never wound down, it just ended, but you know what I mean. People were starting to download things. We were starting to download things. Anyway, because a lot of people were downloading stuff, they weren't coming to the club so much. And the people that were coming to the club, a lot of them would just sit there and watch the episodes. And, you know, if any of the rest of us are kind of having a conversation, you get shushed. You know, you'd have maybe 20 people in chairs watching an episode on the screen, and the rest of them sitting, and a few other of us would be sitting around having a wee quiet conversation, and always just shh. And you're like, okay. Anyway, I was getting a lot busier with work at that time. I'd just qualified as a nurse a few years before this, and I was getting a lot busier. And it was like, you know what? I'm working weekends, things like that. I don't have the energy for this anymore, and actually, it's not worth the effort I'm putting into it. I'm not sure that was the right mindset at the time, but it was maybe also a bit burnt out on running it as well. So there was a core group of us, and we were all role players, and we role played, and we had a Star Trek role playing group. And I kind of said, you know what? Why don't we do an audio novel? An audio novel would be great. And I'd seen some fan films. I'd seen a little bit of Hidden Frontier, and I think this was around about the time that the Frost Exeter came out. But doing a fan film myself was not something that occurred to me. I thought, let's try and do an audio novel. And Dylan Feeney, who's one of our members, and he composed our theme tune as well. He said to me, why don't we just do a fan film? I kind of went, yeah, we'll do a fan film. What a great idea. It hadn't occurred to me. Dylan said, yeah, why not? Steve Hammond was there, and he's done a lot of our done a lot of our directing, most of our directing really, and almost all of our videography. And he edited the first episode, and he's edited on and off since then. He kind of said, I've got a camcorder. Well, yeah, you can direct, and you can record it. Anyway, we thought, this will be fine. This will take us a year. We can do a film. No bother. Hidden Frontier punts out 6 in a year. We can do 1 in a year. Turns out that making a film is actually really difficult, and you can't just throw it together with your friends in a couple of weeks. So, anyway, long story in the short, it took us a lot longer. It took a lot of work. There was a lot of things we had to learn, and a lot of it was on the go as we were doing it. So sometimes we would shoot a scene, go back and look and go, oh, that's not going to work. We'll need to reshoot that. Things like that. Sometimes a lot of stuff we did was exteriors, so we went outside and shot stuff, and sometimes we had to reshoot stuff because of weather or other things like that. Sometimes we'd shoot things and look at, yeah, that's fine, and look at it and go, well, actually, no, we want it to be a bit more dynamic. Let's reshoot it! So all told, I think it took us about 4 years to finish our first film. I think we were pretty ambitious with the film. There was a lot of effect work in it. There was a lot of green screen work in it. And there was a fair bit of action in it. As a product of its time, I think it holds up. If you compare it to anything that people are making now, it's like... Perspective, quality-wise, it's not amazing. But I think... Otherwise, I think the story holds together pretty well. It's not perfect. There's a lot of things I would change about it, but I think it holds pretty well. But anyway, it was one of those things. It's like someone said, let's do a fan film. I said, why not? It must be easy. I'm an idiot, but I've increasingly learned that I'm an idiot as the older I get. But that was certainly one of my brightest and dumbest moments. But either way, I've fan films have brought me an awful lot of joy over the last years. Yeah, an awful lot of joy in that time. I mean, it's been nearly 17 years I've been working on fan films, but I've just had so much fun doing it. It's not always been fun. Sometimes it's a lot of hard work and it's frustrating, it has to be said as well. But I think as a fan, it's just been the joy I've gotten out of it is incalculable, and it's pure, and it outweighs any of the negatives I've had. I mean, I've made some really good friends from fan films. I mean, Dennis Bailey wrote for Star Trek: Next Generation. I mean, seriously, what? I've acted in something that he wrote and directed. I've acted on original series sets in a film with Denise Crosby, directed by David Gerrold, who wrote The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's not impressive to everybody, but for a fan, that's like remarkable. And I mean, I've done multiple crossovers with Hidden Frontier, and I've got some great friends there that I've made. I used to love working with Risha Denny, who played Shelby there, because I wrote a little crossover scene in our first episode with her, and Rob had agreed to shoot that for us. And I wrote it very straight, and Shelby teases Hunter a bit, and she added just this layers to it, just in her performance, and I went, that's amazing. And then that kind of relationship between those characters grew out of her performance, really. So that was fun. But the point I'm making, that I've made so many friends from this. I mean, it's 10 years ago next month that my wife and I went on a road trip to Yosemite with some of the Hidden Frontier guys. I mean, we spent like 6 days in Yosemite, driving from LA in Yosemite, hiked the Glacier Point Trail, just amazing. But things like that would not have happened to me if it hadn't been for fan films. I would never have gone to Washington DC to worked on a film with Dennis, or to upstate New York, or it blows my mind, the people I've met through these things and the experience I've ever had. And I mean, gone to Vasquez Rocks about 4 times because of people I met through fan films. Yeah, it's amazing. And for scrappy little cheap fan films like I make, to have had some of these experiences, I don't know, it's not that impressive to most people, but to me as a fan, it's just brought me that much joy, and I just love doing these things. It's why, if Rob calls me up and says, we want to do a film next year, he's like, absolutely, I'm there, I love working with you guys. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. Like you and Rob and everyone who you mentioned, Hidden Frontier, even Dark Armada, at one point.
Robin's such a nice guy.
Awesome. They are all awesome. And like you guys do these things that myself, I was always dreaming about. Like I had this fantasy when I was younger, and just like, oh, it would be awesome to, like, they have the uniform, and I didn't have a uniform. But actually my mom was a tailor, so she made up a few uniforms for me, which I still have. I don't fit them anymore, but I still have them.
I know that problem.
And it was awesome to just even just to wear them, and I remember when I had the first contact uniform. It was fleece, made out of fleece. It was really warm, especially on many occasions, and I wasn't really a small guy, if you know what I mean. And I got my first TOS communication, and it was so out of out of context, but I was like, finally I can, like, I can do things. And seeing you guys and Hidden Frontier, I remember I used to love, and I still every now and then look back to Hidden Frontier, because what they did, it was, for the time, it was remarkable.
If you look at the technology they had, you just can't fathom. I think people look at Hidden Frontier, especially now, and think, oh, that doesn't look great. But if you realize what they were working with, and we did not have the technology, they did not have the technology back then that we have now. Making fan films now is 100 times easier than it was 20 years ago. And it's 20 years ago this year that Rob released his first episode.
Wow.
I mean, really, that's just...
Yeah, it's insane how technology changes.
It's insane.
What's available.
And yeah, the resources available to us now are amazing. I mean, I've just bought a new camera that's like 4K recording in like a micro 4/3 body, and the footage from it's amazing.
And yeah, and And tying up to this, Intrepid,
Hmm.
your love letter to the fandom, and
Hmm.
for your love to Star Trek. How did you come up with Intrepid?
Some of it is based on our old role-playing group, because some of the characters from our role-playing group
Mm-hmm.
translated across to that. And some of it, one of the ideas Steve Hammond had early on that did kind of make it into the early drafts and did kind of stick in there, but then kind of got forgotten about, was the idea
Mm-hmm.
that we're so far out on the frontier that, if you if you looked at the stars, you couldn't actually see the stars, because if you look in one direction, there's no stars out there because we're on the edge
Mm-hmm.
of the galaxy. That kind of got left by the wayside as we got on, because we got involved with Hidden Frontier and stuff like that. It wasn't practical for us to be that far out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but basically, my idea was that I kind of wanted a crew that were not like the best of the best, and they're not the best of the best. Although actually they've grown into a pretty good crew.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted was, I wanted more civilians in it. I wanted to see more of normal people, like, which is why we put in the merchant service. Although I don't think we did them as much justice as I would like, and the
Mm-hmm.
colony. If I could go back, one of the things I would absolutely ditch. I had this whole when I was writing the script, I was trying to put little tips of the hats to various thing in, and at the time I thought, yeah, we can do multiple films.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this whole arc built in. The reality was that a lot of that didn't happen, but I put in this conspiracy subplot with Section 31 and stuff like that. I really wish I hadn't put that in, because I think the core story of, Federation trying to help these kind of independent, slightly grumpy civilians build their colony
Mm-hmm.
when they don't really want the help, that's enough of a story. I didn't need a conspiracy subplot to it.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of detracts from the story I was trying to tell. But it is what it is, and that's what I wrote at the time. But I think this idea of the civilians and Starfleet trying to work together, but also not pulling in the same direction and not always
Mm-hmm.
getting on, because a lot of the things like we hear about the utopia and blah blah blah. Well, I mean, Deep Space Nine pretty much shows that, yes, Cisco says it's right. It's easy to be a saint in paradise. Earth is a paradise, but out on the frontier, when it's not just the Federation and there's other problems, it's not so easy. And I mean, we saw things on TNG with the Maquis and things like that. There weren't people there that didn't always agree with the Federation or agree with Starfleet. So
Yeah.
I wanted to build on that idea that these people were there. You could work with them, and sometimes you didn't. Their differences were not as wide as they thought they were, and I wanted to show them kind of pulling apart and then pulling together, and we kind of do that, but not as well as I would have liked. So that was
Mm-hmm.
my idea for it. They would be at odds and then they would come together and work together. It's not a very original idea, but that was where I was going with it. And that's what I show, because I don't think we see that enough. We don't see enough of ordinary people in Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's always the best of the best. So again, with the Intrepid crew, I didn't want it to be the best of the best. I didn't want Hunter to be, great captain. He's basically a cross between Jack O'Neill and Howard Hunter from Hill Street Blues. But if you've ever watched it, you're probably too young to watch Hill Street Blues. But
Yeah, but I know who Jack O'Neill is, though.
yeah. So Hunter's kind of played to be a bit like O'Neill in that he's smarter than he makes himself out to be, but he's also a little bit the butt of the jokes. And I also got a little bit of, he's a little bit arrogant and slightly up himself, which I got from Howard Hunter. A little bit uptight, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But some of that's kind of an acquired veneer, because he likes his crew, in that he lets his crew have a little bit of freedom and kind of take the mickey out of him a little bit, because he thinks it's good for morale. He may be wrong in that, but that's what he does.
But that's fine. That's just human nature, I guess, at the end.
Yeah.
And then your character is evolving as well during the episodes and during the years that you've been portraying this character. So, Treasure for Ages.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very well supported episode, and it will be out in this year. And I watched the trailer a few times, and it's interesting. It's brilliant. I cannot wait to actually watch it. I love your productions. I watched almost all of them. Still have a few to catch up with, but what we can expect without giving any spoilers.
It's interesting, because when I write these things, they tend to, and I guess anybody that writes will tell you this. You have an idea, and then you write, and once you write, it kind of takes on a bit of a life of its own. So it evolved from this idea. I don't want to, without giving anybody away. I had this idea about, I'm trying to think of a way to say this without giving anything about the story away. Solving a mystery that's been there for a long time, and it's about revisiting that mystery because once upon a time we went there and tried to solve it. We didn't solve it. We had to leave, and now we're coming back and trying to look at it again.
I see.
Yeah, but obviously I've added in this other twist that actually something bad happened on this previous time, and Hunter's coming back because
that's what you said.
he has some
The
guilt
old
around
demons that you have
absolutely
to defeat.
he has some guilt around this, and he blames himself for things that went wrong. So it's about following up on that, and Hunter being Hunter and as imperfect as I like to portray him, doesn't always make the smartest decisions. So he does make a fairly impulsive decision in this. I'll let you decide whether it was justified or not. There's some stuff that I actually cut from one of the scenes because we were under kind of time constraints. I didn't think the scene ran as well as it did, so I've trimmed it down quite a bit. So there's a little bit of the nuances I think taken out of it, but I think the message gets across well enough. Where his crew try and talk him out of doing the dumb thing that he probably shouldn't do. But yeah, so it's kind of revisiting Hunter's past and things that have happened. But one of the cool things we get to do in it, if you're familiar with the ship, the RRS Discovery, the ship Scott took to the Antarctic.
I'm rolling my eyes at the moment.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
So Scott to the Antarctic in the early 1900s. Robert Falcon Scott took a ship to the Antarctic. He died, but his ship survived, and his ship came back to Dundee. So he took the RRS Discovery, though. I think that was in his second. I can't remember all the historical details anyway, but the RRS Discovery is a ship that Captain Scott took to the Antarctic, and it's berthed in Dundee, and it's been restored in Dundee. So we got to film a scene aboard it.
Oh wow!
For this film, and it's
spoilers.
quite a pivotal. I've not been very private about that. It's quite a pivotal scene. So there might be some implication that there might be some time travel involved in that, but or not. But it's a fun film. There's a little bit of an action in it. There's some characters that are not what the usual kind of Starfleet characters into it in it. I think it's fun. The running time's about 18 minutes.
Wow.
It's a little bit over the guidelines time, but yeah.
What is a guidelines? So
they are guidelines. And as CBS has said, they are not policing it. So if you're a couple of minutes over, they're unlikely to say anything.
Yeah, if you do 120 minutes, they're probably gonna raise some eyebrows.
Well, the guidelines, I think it's one of those things that it depends on how many ticks you get on the red flags. And I think going 1 or 2 minutes over the guidelines, I don't think anybody's gonna. I wouldn't intentionally do it, but the edit just kind of came out of that. And to be fair, that does include the end credits. So the actual running time is probably more like 17 minutes, which I think is fun. Okay,
it's fun. It's fun.
That'd be fun. So our plan was to screen it at Edinburgh Comic Con in April, but that obviously didn't happen because the convention's been postponed. Yeah. So there's a couple of things we need. There's a wee tiny bit of ADR we need to do with it, which I'm not going to be able to do until the lockdown's relaxed a bit, and then I'll hopefully get that done. And I've kind of we were rushing to get it ready for April, but we've kind of pulled it back a little bit and said, look, because Dylan's doing the score and do the final sound mix, says it's okay, take your time, get it fun. As long as we've got it finished for autumn, that's fine. So it'll probably be out. It'll be out before winter. And I'm excited because I've seen a complete cut with a score, not a final and sound effects. It's not a final sound mix, but actually I think it holds up really well. I enjoyed it, and yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it. As I mentioned, I loved your work before, and I think this is gonna be beautiful.
I'm excited to get it out there. I'm also excited for our next film, which is the one we crowdfunded for earlier this year, which.
That was you see. I was like thinking like when I said like very very supported, that was the supported one.
Yeah, that's Echoes, and
I
that's okay. No, no,
I didn't make my
it's
research properly.
no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's confusing to keep all these titles correct, to be honest. But yeah, so that one, Echoes, which there
Mhm,
may also be some time travel involved in this, and this is completely unplanned, but there you go. It's just the stories I've ended up writing. Um, that we've filmed interiors for, so we have a lot of exteriors to shoot, which we're
mhm.
planning to shoot over the summer. That might
Ish.
have to be postponed a wee bit, but we'll see what
Mhm,
happens.
mhm,
I'm fairly optimistic we might get to shoot in late July or
mhm.
August. So if it's much beyond August, I think we'll have to postpone it until next year.
Well, you can
Because
still do it in a
the
safe distance.
the problem is
Mhm,
weather's really unpredictable, and I've fought the weather on exteriors before. It
mhm,
gets cold, it gets wet, it gets windy. These are all things that make filmmaking really, really difficult. Um, if it's one of those things, wind's a killer. But if it's
mhm,
just windy, worst case scenario, you can ADR dialogue. That's a lot of work though, and I'd rather
mhm,
avoid that. Rain, you can sometimes work with rain,
mhm,
but you need consistent across all your shots. So it's raining one day and bright sunshine the next.
mhm,
That's no good. Cold, I've shot in the cold often enough that I'm not keen to do it again. I would do it for me, but a lot of the cast, it's a lot to put them through, especially when they're in costume and things like that. So,
mhm,
and we're doing multiple takes over, and then there's like kind of standing around for times, waiting for setups and things like that. So I'm quite fixed on it. It's like if we can't get it done during the summer this year, I think I'll
mhm,
postpone it till spring next year.
mhm,
But hopefully, I mean, we could probably push as late as September. But
mhm.
if we're past September, I don't think. I've shot in October in Scotland before, and it's not fun. I think I would probably not want to shoot in October, and I don't think I'd want to put our cast through that.
Mhm,
Um, Especially, I'm not giving much away here because I have made it fairly obvious that it's time travel to this next story, and
mhm,
it does involve an actor playing a character from the original series era. So
mhm.
she would be in the mini event.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's
little
not
little spoiler, do
that
too.
is not something I want to put an actress or an actor for that matter
Mhm,
through in the cold. No, that's just a bad plan, and that's when people generally act on these things. And I know there are exceptions, but certainly for my films, people
mhm,
aren't getting paid for it. They're coming along and they're volunteering their time. So I feel there's a requirement to make sure A, they're fed, and B, I don't want them freezing their ass off because then, and I have done it. People have done it, and they've come and they've worked and they've been cold, and they've been wet as well. Um, it's not fair on them, and it's asking too much from them. So I'm not really that keen to ask them to work
mhm,
in freezing cold weather again. As much as it's painful to postpone things, I'd rather have my cast be happy and not miserable on a shoot, because if they're miserable on a shoot, I'm surprising how many people. It is surprising to me how many people come back and work on these things again, having done one and having been on shoots where they're cold and wet
mhm.
and complaining how cold and wet they are, and justifiably complaining how cold and wet they are. And then the next year they come back and do another one. And you're like, I can't believe you're still doing these. Um, so I'm not willing to put people in that position unless there's exceptions where I might do it. Like if we're halfway through a shoot and the weather changes, stuff like that. If we can weather it, we would discuss it at the
Mhm,
time. I want to avoid that as
mhm.
much as possible because I think I need to not put my cast through that because they're very kind and very generous to put up with bad conditions for no pay. But yeah, I think I should stop asking them to do things like that.
Oh, bless. Well, we talked quite a lot about what you do now, how you get involved with things. Well, one thing I think would be good to explore to how did you get into Star Trek? What how or rather when or how?
That's I can't remember exactly how I got into, but I can remember watching the animated series first run
Wow.
as a kid. I was a kid in the 70s, and the animated. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, I was really into Space 1999. Funnily enough,
Hmm.
I don't know why that's funnily enough. It just I was a big fan of Space 1999.
Hmm.
But the animated I loved Star Trek, and I have strong memories of watching animated Star Trek. I can still remember watching the counterclock incident, and I must have been 5, 6, something like that. I remember a birthday party, and again, I must have been 5 or 6, so I remember playing Captain Kirk at a birthday party. I had this little high chair from when I was a kid, and that was the captain's chair and stuff like that I still used to sit in. Yeah, I was a sad and pathetic nerd boy, but nothing much has changed really. I've gone from playing Captain Kirk as a kid to playing Captain Hunter as an adult. I'm sure there's some I'm sure a psychologist would have a field day with me, but Yes, I mean, it's just simple as that. I watched as a kid, I loved it, and I basically grew up with it, and it kind of grew up with me. And I remember, it's funny looking at fandom reacting to things like Discovery and Picard now, or actually when Enterprise came out, or Voyager, or Deep Space Nine. Because, I mean, I was not a first generation fan, but probably second generation fan. Growing up with it in the 70s, and when I heard about Next Generation, I was like, no. No. You can't have Star Trek without Kirk, Spock, or McCoy. Star Trek is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. You can't do it. And so it was 87 at start, and I don't think I saw my first episode in 89. I think it was on DVD. It was on video, rented on video from probably Blockbuster or whatever was around at the time where I lived. In fact, it was probably even a little independent video rental place. And I rented The Naked Now and Code of Honor. I didn't even see Encounter at Farpoint first, because this was what they had, so I rented it. And I watched those 2 episodes, and I was convinced it was terrible. Well, actually, to be fair, those 2 episodes are terrible. That was not a good introduction to Next Gen. So I thought, "Ha! I'm right. It's terrible. It's terrible. I hate it. Terrible. It's right. You can't do it. Can't do it. Can't be done." And then I thought, well, I'll give it a chance. I'll watch Encounter at Farpoint. So I rented Encounter at Farpoint, and I watched it. Ha! That's terrible. And to be fair, I can kind of watch Encounter at Farpoint and go, actually, yeah, it's okay, but it's not great, is it? It's not.
It's not the best. It's not the best pilot for sure.
It's not even the best episode, but I wasn't giving it another chance. I was done with it. It's rubbish. Terrible. How can Gene Roddenberry be involved with this rubbish? Anyway, so I was in uni at this point anyway, and I remember, I think it was around about 1990, and I got wind that someone was getting bootleg videotapes from America with episodes on them, and someone offered to me, I was like, okay, I'll give it another shot. And it was season 2. So I remember, and I watched it feeling, it's a bit better. And I got to, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I got to an episode called The Dauphin. It was a Wesley episode.
Which episode?
The Dauphin. It was a Wesley episode.
Oh, yes. With the metamorphic shapeshifter.
That's the one. And it's the one where he's standing in an asteroid field. And I remember watching that and thinking, I like that. Oh, okay. That was all right, actually. And then I watched Pen Pals and I was like, oh, this is quite good. Then I watched Q Who and I was like, holy shit, I like this. So by the end of season 2, I was like, yeah, wow, more. So I got to season 3, and I remember and these were really bad copies, and it was like videotapes. I mean, if you got a videotape, you video something off, and then you record it again and again and again, and it just degrades every time you see it. So it's like, if you get like an old video on YouTube from like about 2005 that's like postage stamp size, that's kind of the quality the video is getting. So, but anyway, season 3 came along. I was like, okay, quite enjoying this. And then it got to Who Watches the Watchers, and I was like, oh my god, I love this show. And it just got better and better from there. And I remember when Best of Both Worlds dropped, and I was like, oh my god, just like on the edge of my seat. And that was a long summer waiting for part 2. But I mean, to this day, Who Watches the Watchers is still in my top 5 episodes. I mean, I'm still a massive TNG fan. TNG is still my favorite series, and that's not a reflection on any others. I think that DS9 is an amazing series, and there's a lot of ways DS9 is a better series than TNG. But the TNG crew are my crew, and that's from someone that grew up with Kirk and Spock and McCoy. But the TNG crew are my crew. I grew up with them. I mean, I matured with them, shall we say. So I've got a lot of loyalty there, which is probably why I like Picard so much. But yeah, so that's kind of how I became a fan, and it's been a long and interesting journey, it has to be said.
I have a feeling that if Sean Track on the Tube listened to this now, he's smiling a lot because I know he's a big advocate of the animated series and he loves the show. And I myself, if I'm sure if you remember, but I reviewed it a few years ago
Mhm.
on my channel.
The
Watched
anime,
it the first time and it was awesome.
the
It's
animated
such
show,
an
it's got, like any of the Star Trek shows, it's got its weak episodes and its strong episodes, and some
yeah.
of its stories are really good. I mean, Yesteryear is amazingly good.
Mm.
I actually like what's the one? Beyond the Farthest Star.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I love that episode, and there's just something about that episode. I like stories that kind of like archaeological mysteries and ancient races and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously one of our short films is kind of along a similar kind of vein as well. The story's kind of got a bit of an element of that to it, but I love stuff like that. But yeah, I think the animated series is, for what it is, a really good show, and I think you could say if you wanted to make a Star Trek movie, you could look at some of the ideas in there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they obviously mined some of the ideas from the animated series for Next Gen. I mean, holodecks come from the animated series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and it's nice to see people starting to look back at the animated series now and going, actually, and it's not been decanonized. It's kind of been recanonized in a way.
Yeah. No, which is awesome. I mean, even in Picard, they mentioned the Zindi, which is slaver weapon from animated
Yeah.
series. So
Yeah.
there's certain
Yeah.
connections.
That was nice to see. I think that's the first time the Kazinti have been mentioned anywhere in the modern series.
Yeah, I don't.
The animated series.
I'm not sure if in the fourth movie, you remember there's a scene when the crew is
Oh, I know
getting
what you
up
mean.
to, and there's some
Is that
son of
Kazinti
a
or is that
creature, but I'm
Cation
not
or-
sure.
Nobody
They
ever
kind of look
named
familiar.
them. I think
Yeah,
it was
that's
supposed
true.
to be a Cation, but I honestly couldn't swear, and I don't know if anybody really ever decided. But you know.
Well, it happened. We'll see. But it was really nice to hear actually
It
something
was
coming back.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they did it because I mean there must be all sorts of licensing issues in mentioning the Kazinti.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah,
because yeah.
complicated. Yeah.
So the time has come. This is the new segment of the show that I practiced with my previous guest, and this is a kind of game that I call "Do Your Shat," which is a William Shatner, Captain Kirk impression game. So I.
Okay, this is the point where I tell you I can't do impersonations and I'm terrible at accents, and I get no end of abuse for my bad accents.
It's just for fun. If you don't want it, I will cut it out.
I will do it because it's you, Gary. I'll do it.
Oh, that's very kind.
But you can laugh at how bad it is.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, is there a particular line you want me to do?
You can do whatever.
I need to think about this now because I'm not going to do Khan because that involves shouting, and my daughter will come running through and go, "What's wrong?" Or my wife will come through, "What the fuck are you doing?" Let me think. Of a line.
This is something. Yeah,
I know. Okay. I'm just trying to think of the correct line. The universe is safe for you and me. But what of Lazarus? What of Lazarus?
Bravo.
I actually like that episode mainly because of that line, because it's one of the that's not even an possible even vague attempt at doing Shatner, but it's one of the moments in the original series where I think you actually see that Shatner actually is capable of being a good subtle actor, because Shatner's not always subtle.
Yeah.
And in that scene he's actually really good and he sells it, even though it's not a great episode. He sells the emotion in that scene. That one's always kind of stuck with me for some bizarre reason. I don't know, maybe I should have done him as Janice Lester, because I'd probably do effeminate Shatner better, but
I don't know. Well, for next time, I definitely have to prepare a line for next time. I'm so
prepare a line. Give me a line. Think of a line and I'll try it. Put me a line.
Don't even know.
Put me on the spot, and I can't think of a line that's yeah, I can't think of one just now.
No, I can think about anything. Okay, let's do Space: The Final Frontier. That's a Shatner one.
Okay, I'm trying to remember how. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Starship Enterprise.
That's awesome.
That's terrible. but you're very
That
kind.
that was an awesome experience to have. And talking about experience, this is something that we touched on pre-recording, and I was always fascinated by the Hilton Las Vegas Star Trek experience. That I know you mentioned pre-recording that you have been visiting a few times, and I think it's been quite a few years actually that they closed it off. How was it?
2011. It was the best place ever. It's like everybody's kind of up in arms at the moment about always everyone's excited about Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Star Trek the Experience was Star Trek the Experience was to Star Trek fans what Galaxy's Edge is to Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
I can't compare it because I haven't been to Galaxy's Edge yet, but I mean, if you can imagine just walking into Star Trek, the Experience sold it, and the actors who play, there are actors there dressed up as characters. Either an Andorian called Tarin or a Vulcan called T'Pril. They're both played by the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Klingon Vulcan, the Klingon Dahar Master. I've forgotten his name at the moment. Ferengi. I mean, these. One called Rogel. There was another one called I can't remember at the moment. But the actors really sold the place. I mean, we're talking about a really good recreation of Quarks for a start. I mean, it really was like you walked in and you're in Quarks. But the thing and the food was actually pretty good, I have to say. But the thing they had this amazing drink called a Warp Core Breach. Oh, it was tasty, but it was also really strong. And it was in this kind of big fishbowl thing with dry ice in it, and it's steamed. It was a big sharing thing, so it came with multiple straws.
Mm-hmm.
They were great. They were amazing. There is a recipe out there somewhere. Anyway, so they had this recreation of Quarks, which was just amazing, and it was really well done. So you could walk into it, and the actors would wander in. There were Borg, Ferengi.
Were there any Dabo girls with Dabo
Klingons.
table?
There were no Dabo girls, but there were definitely Klingons and Romulans and Ferengi wandering around. Depending on when you went, there were more or less of them, but there were actors wandering around, and they were always in character. Always in character. They did not break character. So if you entered into a conversation with them, they would stick out, and you could just throw stuff at them. I remember walking up to this Klingon once, whose name escapes me, because they all had names and you used to know them, but I'd say it's like I kind of walked past and went, do I smell lilac? And this came into a back and forth for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm like, yeah. So I mean, and they did not miss a beat. No matter what kind of you came out of them, they had an answer for you, and it was just it was just constant, and it's like, whoa. So that was amazing fun. And if you were in costume or anything, that just added to the experience. And I always went in costume because I'm a sad nerdy guy. But
come on.
Yeah. But anyway, it was great fun. And there was the History of the Future, which had kind of props and costumes from the show and like a timeline and stuff like that. And that would lead you along to the Borg 4D experience ride. Was it the Borg one? Yes, it was a Borg one, and there was also the Klingon experience ride, both of which were great fun. I preferred the Klingon ride because of the shuttle ride in it, which was awesome. And the actors would tell you, it's like, yeah, if you like being thrown around, sit to the back and to the side because there's more. Because you get, and they were right. It was like, oh, you're in the shuttle ride and you're flying through and in between buildings in Vegas and into warps and subspace warps. It was so much fun. So much fun, and it was very immersive. And wandering through getting taken up to the bridge in the Enterprise and walking through there and into the turbo lift and the turbo lift fall, and it was just so much fun. Or Borg 4D when Borg are coming out the walls at you, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. The place was it was Star Trek heaven. I was never disappointed going in there. I was only disappointed when they closed it. Funnily enough, I've actually got a picture on my desktop of a bunch of us in the place now. Oh yeah, bridge photo there as well. I was copying photos for something else. I've still got a few of them on my desktop. So yeah, it was just so much fun. And I don't think anybody that came there with us was ever disappointed, because we went in 2005 when we were on a honeymoon. My wife and I went, and then we went back the following year. Then the year after that, we convinced our friend and his husband to come along. I mean, they were both friends, so we convinced them to come along. And then the year after that, we dragged some more friends along. And I think at one point there was a group of about 6 or 7 of us went, and it was just a lot of fun. And I have nothing but fond memories of that place. And I was gutted when they closed it,
Mm.
because the last time I was there, I never thought the last time I left the place it would be the last time I was there.
Mhm.
And had I known, I think I would have hung around a lot longer before I left.
Mhm.
I'd always kind of hoped to go back, and I never did get to go back after. I think 2008 was the last time I was there, and it closed in 2011.
Mm.
So that was kind of, or maybe it was there. I must have been there in 2009 actually, if it closed in 2011, because we were in Vegas briefly in 2009, so I must have gone down then.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I was there 2 years before it closed, and then that was it. So I wish I'd known that was the last time I was there. I maybe would have bought more merchandise and spent even more time there, and eaten more of Moogie's pasta, because I really liked Moogie's pasta. It was
They
good.
really had Moogie's pasta, so I
It had
guess loads
Moogie's
of.
pasta. I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly, it had sun-dried tomatoes in it, and it was fusilli, and it was really tasty actually.
It was
Yeah,
was it pre-chewed?
I really hope not, because it tasted good. I'm pretty sure it wasn't pre-chewed. I really hope it wasn't pre-chewed. I think I might have sent it back if it was pre-chewed.
Gosh, no, I cannot even imagine. I mean, as I mentioned you off camera, off recording, I always wondered how it would be just to go there, because that was really just was for Star Trek. That I'm not sure if you been a fan of Doctor Who, but the Doctor Who experience in Cardiff, like I happened to visit 2 times, and I remember a couple of years ago they closed that one too, which is a bit of a shame, because it was
I
a
never got
fantastic
to the
experience.
Doctor Who one. I like Doctor Who a lot. I'm not as big a Doctor Who fan as I am a Star Trek fan, so I never did get down to the Cardiff experience, and I regret not having gone.
Yeah, especially now
But
that they closed up.
yeah.
But it was I can imagine that it must have been even like 10 times better than, I mean, better in a scale of size and grand, and you have a bigger universe in Star Trek in a sense.
No, actually, but I don't know how the two of them would have compared. I mean, certainly the footprint in Vegas was massive. And there was, I mean, it was the way they got you coming off that shuttle and then shuffled out was really good. And obviously, you come off the shuttle and you come straight into the shops, the promenade shops.
Well, the Doctor Who one started in a lobby, and then you queued up. It was a small place where the curator was showing us in a screen, showing that, oh, this is the Time Lords and this is Gallifrey, and then, oh, this is the Doctor. Let's see if we can get a touch with him or something, and then obviously something happened. So there was a crack in the wall. The wall opened up, and you ended up in different rooms, and you had to go through like Dalek experience. So you were in the control room that you had to, like, there was like 4 joysticks, and you had to like play around with it, which was awesome. And then you ended up in a Dalek place, and then in a Weeping Angel forest, and you had to collect some crystals. And at the end of the day, the Doctor was coming in and out every now and then, saying that, hey, okay, like one more crystal, okay, I think I'm able to materialize the TARDIS inside the TARDIS. And it was fun. It was a fun experience. And
I probably would have enjoyed it. Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed it.
That was fun, and I did it twice, and I was really tempted to go back again, but I wasn't able to afford it when just before. It was a massive send off for the thing, and I still don't understand why didn't they just renew the license and.
I know.
And
well, Vegas, yeah, the Star Trek experience was the same. It's like it just came in down to Paramount Parks have been sold to Cedar Fair, and Cedar Fair was were willing to keep it going, but then the Hilton put the rates up, and they just couldn't come to an agreement. Yeah, there was talk of relocating, because someone had bought all the assets for it. They were going to relocate it to Neonopolis, which is on the Fremont Street Experience, or down beside the Fremont Street Experience on downtown Vegas. But then the financial crash happened, and it all just fell through. And then a few years later, we sold all the bits off.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but it was again a bit of a shame.
Yeah, yeah, it would have been nice to actually see it relocated, but and it's ridiculous because they shut it down literally the same year that a film was coming out.
Yeah.
Or was it? It was around about the time.
I think it was around the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had the auction, and I think after the auction that they announced that, oh, we're gonna do a Star Trek movie, and we just sold out everything. What's gonna happen now?
Maybe it wasn't 2011. It closed down.
I think it was
2009.
Early.
It must have been
2009 was the new movie.
Maybe it was 2009. that the experience closed? I'd need to check. Maybe it was 2009 actually. In which case, the last time I went would have been 2008. That would make sense. That
Well,
would make sense.
nevertheless, I guess all good things
Yeah, yeah, but it was a
come to
shame.
an end at one point.
Very
It's a
sad to see it
shame.
go. And I know a lot of the staff that work there still like miss it. But yeah, it's. I wish I could go back. Alas, I do not have a time machine.
I wish I could go.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because we were in a honeymoon in Las Vegas, but obviously that was a few years ago, and there was no sign of any Star Trek.
Yeah.
Which is
There was
which is a
Avengers
bad
though.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Where did you stay in Vegas?
New York.
Actually, that's a nice one. I like New York. We've stayed in the MGM, which is just across the road.
Just across the road, yeah.
And a couple of other places. But I like Vegas. I mean, it's a bit of an acquired taste in some ways, I think. I probably would never have gone. Probably the only reason we ever went there was the experience. And I must admit, I like Vegas, and I do like going back. And the yearly Star Trek convention is one of the things that makes me go back as well.
Yeah. Well, at least the Star Trek convention is held in more or less the same places as the experience. So that's your yearly annual Star Trek experience.
Roughly. Well, it used to be in the Hilton, and then they moved it to the Rio.
The Rio, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, some people don't like the Rio. I like the Rio. I think it's fine. It's a little bit off strip. I like the pool there, but I think it's a decent. I think it's a good venue for the convention, and it works for it. There can always be better venues, but I have no complaints about the Rio. Other people's mileage may vary. I have nothing but good memories there.
So talking about good memories, I'm going to straight cut to this. When you think about Star Trek, someone shouts it from the very far, and you're in a shift in your working day, and someone shouts Star Trek. What is the first thing that comes to your mind?
That's a good question. Probably Next Generation. Enterprise D. Picard. Darmok. Things like that. Yeah. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, but to be honest, nothing but good memories, because I think, nothing's 100% good, but I think generally it gets you back to the whole warm blanket thing. I mean, it is very much a warm blanket for me, and it's a comfortable, happy place for me. As soon as it's funny, because it's like I was at work today and I saw one of the anaesthetists that I haven't seen for a while. I said, he's pulling. I said, because I was running, so I wasn't in PPE today. So, but he was in theatre in PPE, and he came to the door, and he's like, waved me over, because it's like when the guys are in theatre in PPE and you're the runner, you have to bring stuff in, so they'll kind of waves it. What do you need? Gave us yeah. Have you watched Picard yet? It's like, dude, I haven't seen you in like about 6 months, and this is the first thing you said. You seen Picard yet? It's like, yeah. What did you think of it? It's like, so, and as soon as somebody starts a conversation about Star Trek, I'm like, and it's like we're back and forth for like a wee while. They're talking about it, and it's like it just immediately elevates my mood. Because it is my go-to happy place.
That's your go-to warm blanket.
Absolutely. Which is the point of your podcast. But yeah, it immediately raises my mood. That's awesome. Somebody else that gets it. It's great.
No, that's awesome. And there's never a wrong answer in this case, because a warm blanket can mean a lot of things for anyone. That I always refer to, and for me it's the whole franchise. But sometimes it's just Star Trek V, sometimes it's just Star Trek Voyager, sometimes it's just, I don't know.
I agree, and it doesn't matter, because I love all of it. And yeah. Short Treks, the Tribbles one. Oh my god, I know some people hate it. I think it's the funniest 10 minutes of Star Trek I've ever seen.
It's the funniest. I agree. I agree on that.
I know there's quite a few people who don't like it. I don't get it. I just laughed. And the better thing, the guy playing Edward is Archer. Oh, have you never watched Archer?
Oh, the
animated spy series.
Never.
The guy playing Edward is Archer.
So it's like a double Star Trek for you.
And he's almost playing the same character, to be honest.
Oh my.
There's a lot of Archer in Edward. Oh yeah, definitely. It's actually like, yeah. And I almost think they wrote that part for you, and they pointedly had that in mind. They watched Archer and go, yeah, you have to watch
Gosh.
Archer. If you like childish humor in a spy series, an animated spy series, you'll love it. It's hilarious, and it's crazy and insane and off the wall. Yeah, I really like it.
I might give it a go. I have I have a rule that I give everything a go at least once, and we'll see what happens.
Hey, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but you know what is?
No, I know. Recently, and this is a bit of an off topic towards the end, but Sean kept saying me, Truck on the Tube, kept saying me that watch The Expanse, watch The Expanse, watch The Expanse. I tried once, it didn't get me.
No.
I tried the second time
Uh-huh.
with my wife. We tried it together, 17 minutes, and we both decided not to go any further with it. No, it was a different show.
Believe me, I get it, but you kind of have to hang in with The Expanse because there's a lot of world building done in the early episodes. See, once you get past the world building, it's great. It's because it's slow. It is slow. It takes. Did you ever watch Game of Thrones?
No. And I'm not planning to.
That first season of Game of Thrones is a slog to get through the first few episodes because it's all world building. Who are these guys? What? Who? What? Where? I can't keep track of all these. The Expanse is a bit like that, and it's a little bit overload, but it's also very slow and plodding when it starts off. It's seriously worth waiting. It's worth the time invested in it because I can't wait to see the next season of The Expanse. I love it. Love The Expanse.
I told Sean that I'm gonna give another a third try. I'm actually going to sit down the whole episode.
What I would suggest is you really need to get through the first at least 3 or 4 episodes.
Okay.
And that's a little bit of an effort. I would possibly, but it really does pay off.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cast are amazing. It's a great setting. It's a really good setting, and it's really well realized. Yeah, it's a good show. The action's awesome too, and actually, it's probably it's very realistic space combat as well. Yeah, but it's very different to Star Trek.
Well, thank you very much for being the show. It was really awesome to finally make this happen and chat about all of these things that we just chat about. And it was an absolute joy for me, and I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
I have had great fun.
Okay, that's good. That's really good to hear. That's what I like to hear. No,
been very relaxed and just waffling, so that works for me.
That works for me too. So thank you again for being here. If anyone from the audience wants to reach out to Nick, I know you're in Twitter. You're as at Nick Cook, if I remember correctly.
Help me out here. I'd have to check it
myself. Where your fans can
Nick
connect
J.
with you.
Cook. Yeah, Nick J. Cook on Twitter.
And you're on Facebook, and you're when your fantastic show Starship
Intrepid. We also have a website, starshipintrepid.net.
There you go.
Which isn't updated that much because we mostly keep the Facebook page up to date. But someone did contact me recently and said, "You've not updated your website in a couple of years." It's like, yeah, because nobody visits websites anymore. They'll go to Facebook. All the hits are on Facebook and YouTube, you know. Yeah, but I probably should update the website at some point.
Well, thank you very much again. It was a blast to talk to you today. Thank you very much to listeners to join up for another episode of the Warm Blanket podcast. And I'll see you everyone in the next episode. Live long and prosper.
Take care.
And that was it for this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and rest assured, new episodes will be coming out every week where we sit down with a Trekkie to find out what makes us feel good about Star Trek and to discover what is our warm blanket made of. If you really enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. It would really mean a lot to me. To find out more about this audio adventure, please visit TREKKERPRISE.com/podcast, where you can also listen to the previous episodes. Thank you again for listening to yet another episode of the Warm Blanket podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode. Live long and prosper.